Hello, this video comes from a question I got in my Q&A which I thought needed a more elaborate explanation, and that's what this video essay is. Enjoy! So you've heard me talk about Abyssmare and seldom talk about it positively, and you've also heard me brush over the entire existence of Call of Artemis many times. So now is the time to address both of those things. And yes, that means the Call of Artemis video and the Abyssmare video were the same option in the poll. I didn't realize how connected they were at the time. But, with the benefit of hindsight, the reason I don't like Abyssmare might actually be because of Call of Artemis. And more specifically, the fact that Call of Artemis just does what Abyssmare is trying to do, but better. Call of Artemis, for all the memes of them coming out of nowhere to bully some high schoolers, was actually built up very intricately. I think we take for granted just how much they had before getting stranded on that island. The first scene of the first episode of First Mix is Irie and Shano performing, inspiring our main characters. It is established that they are legends. Fast forward to the current day, Irie is working at a coffee shop, yet still acting as a mentor for the upcoming generation, supporting Happy Round emotionally and voice training the leads of Rondo and Peaky. We know she was good. Even the song that inspires the Rinky to form Happy Around is by her and Shano. And then we get the group of professionals, Photon Maiden, literally auditioned to be the best of the best. Now, this is similar to Michiru's team up with Yuki in Peaky's unit story too. Yuki's team up only considered the skill of each individual person, which is not unlike what you'd expect from an audition. However, Photon Maiden is special in the fact that it's not just a bunch of people who can perform well and pass an audition. They were picked with synergy in mind. This is why they were so easily able to find a common vision at the end of their unit story. So why am I gushing about Photon again in this video about Call of Artemis and Abyssmare? Because you know who produced and managed that unit? Shano. We know from the contrast between Yuki's failure and Photon's success that just throwing skilled people together doesn't equate to a good unit. Shano had a good eye for how to pick people beyond their raw talent, and that's why Photon's creation went way better than Yuki's amalgamation of a unit. Again, she's established as a big deal. And when those two units find out, like when Photon discusses how big a deal their producer is, and Irie is found out by Happy Around, despite how familiar they've become, both units are still impressed because their names hold weight. In fact, Maho Saori and Shinobu are constantly talking about big shot DJs, and Call of Artemis is among them. And then we get to D4 Fest 1, where we are introduced to Mana and Toka. Being the MC to an event as built up as D4 Fest, we get an idea of Mana's talent. At the end too, when she joins in on Toka's performance, they basically steal the whole show. This is such a big deal that it steers Peaky's entire arc through the second story. And speaking of Toka, she basically solos Peaky in that tournament thing, again proving that Call of Artemis, which at this point has been hinted at by all the characters referencing some legendary unit that split up all those years ago, is a big deal. All of these characters are established as big deals, not only in universe, but narratively speaking as well. They hold weight. Irie and Shano both led to the creation of and acted as guiding forces for two of our main 6 units. Toka took Peaky, who by no means were resting on their laurels but were feeling a little stagnant in terms of their development, and kicked them into overdrive. They were important focus points for main characters. They meant something. It was a whole event whenever one of them showed up. And that's why, as unfair as it may feel to Peaky, the audience doesn't have a hard time believing that Call of Artemis could have won D4 Fest 2. Not only do we have all these hints that they're a super talented and strong unit, they've also been somewhat of a mystery this whole time. Irie and Shano being secretive about their past, having weird feelings at D4 Fest 1, the reason they split up in the first place being kept vague as hell yet hinted at in Happy Around's unit story. It's all building up to their eventual comeback, and while it may have come to a surprise to almost no one, it still had a big impact. Now let's look at Abyssmare. Abyssmare quite literally shows up out of nowhere, and maybe that's the point. But in their first appearance, they say, hey, we're better than all of you, and to prove it, let's beat this unit that Photon Maiden already beat. They try to establish them as big deals, but beating someone that Photon beat just puts them on the same level as Photon. And while I do love Photon, I know that in lore they aren't even the second strongest unit. And I guess for some people, that scene works enough to establish them as strong, but it just didn't have the time that Call of Artemis had to build up their reputation. Speedrunning something like that just doesn't work well in my opinion, and is basically the epitome of tell don't show storytelling. You're telling me that Peaky, the unit that we've watched, get guided by and deemed a worthy opponent for Call of Artemis, the unit that you've been hyping up for 2 years, would lose to a handful of people who we've never even met. Now, you might be thinking, didn't Toka also just show up out of nowhere and beat Peaky? Why are you okay with that? Like I said, it's because Irie and Shano already built up the reputation of Call of Artemis, so the mere fact that she was one of them puts her on the same level, and enough to establish her as a viable threat to Peaky. Abyssmare had no such build-up, but speaking of Call of Artemis, where the hell are they? Just how interesting would it be if those two units faced off? Anyways, back on topic. We're supposed to just accept that this new unit who we've just met is now the top dog in the unit to beat? We've already done that. Twice. Even Photon Maiden did it first. Look, first mix. We form Happy Around, we meet Peaky, and we as an audience realize that, oh, there's gonna be a big showdown between those two units. They make it to Sunset Stage and we're like, oh, okay, so they're gonna face them there. Doesn't really matter what round, but they will face off. Maybe they'll win, maybe they won't, it still doesn't matter. They're going to face off. And then, along comes Photon Maiden, out of pretty much nowhere. A group of highly skilled professionals that bursts onto the scene, challenging our protagonists, basically being put on the same footing as them without the massive struggle. Sound familiar? But even they had the lore drop that they were the ones who rejected Happy Around's original song. They see themselves as either better or their styles incompatible. It sets up this nice arc where Ray, breaking the molds of what a Happy Around song should sound like, gets to beat Photon, who rejected their style earlier, with her own style. It's a nice narrative, and most importantly, Happy Around wins because they earned that win. Not only is it feasible in universe, it's feasible to the audience. This also serves to set up an arc for Photon Maiden that will shape their development going forward. As for the second time it's happened, I've already stated what happens with Call of Artemis, but both times there was a narrative build up to the showdown that made it feel earned for the victor, and like a narrative turning point for the loser. Abyssmare had none of that. Sure, in universe we get told that Abyssmare is good, literally having a song called I Am the Best, but none of that talent feels earned. And yeah, they give us backstory as to why they should be so talented later on, but like, first of all, first impressions were not good without that backstory, and second of all, order of operations. So you finally have the lore behind why I dislike Abyssmare. To sum it up, they're just doing what Photon and Call of Artemis did, but without any of the build-up, narrative arc, or justification. And yes, I am aware that this kind of thing happens in anime and games all the time. But that only happens to villains, which I have no obligation to like.